It's a double bonus on Dan Really Likes Wine this week because I have two guests in one. I have one of the coolest, most enthusiastic young wine proprietors in the country who's got her own label, which somehow she manages to do despite also having something of a day job, because she's also written the book on modern marketing in South Africa, which means I get to chat to her about her love of wine, but also find out what we could do better to make sure we get South African wine sold all over the world. Khensani Nobanda, welcome.
Dan, thanks, and lovely to see you.
It's unusual for us to have a glass of wine together.
Oh, really?
There have been many, and they're always hugely enjoyable because the conversations we have tend to effortlessly merge between great wine and talking about the broader marketing world. And often those come together on how we can do better with wine and what we can do with it. But I do want to start with the wine story, because you're more than somebody just, I quite like wine. You've got a real passion for it, and that translated into, I actually want to have my own label.
Absolutely.
So how does this kid from Eswatini discover wine and then discover that it's more than just a passing interest?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually funny. How I discovered wine was it's a little bit of a career story, right? So I was working at DRLW at that time, and Unilever, which was a company I started at, they wanted me to go back to Unilever, and I was living in Cape Town. So the MD of Unilever South Africa case, and a guy called Matthew Bull, one of the biggest advertising creative minds in the world, who happens to be South African and is based in New York. So they sent a car to come fetch me, to come convince me to basically, go back to Unilever. I remember getting there, and they say to me, we're having wine, like, which wine would you like? And I only knew there was red and white. And I was so nervous. I was almost, and I hardly get it, but I was like literally sweating a little bit. And I just said, whatever you guys are having and stuff. And they were having a really nice Chardonnay, actually. So I think from then on was like, this thing's really nice. Like, what is it? And I love stuff which it's not that straightforward, right? Like there's a lot of interesting sort of things in it. And so from then on, what I started really to do, and so this was like 2003. So then on, what I really started to do, you started to play around and taste different types of wines, and landed on the, I think maybe not so surprising discovery that I'm a bubbles girl.
Well, was there a light bulb moment with a particular bottle where suddenly it all made sense?
Do you know, it was actually the Monroe. I think it's from Villera.
It is indeed.
Yeah.
It's South Korea.
Yeah. And I remember my best friend in Aitsejo actually going to the Villera wine farm. And at that time, there was this whole thing about champagne, obviously, right? And, we're starting to earn really well. We're buying, the Verves of the world and all of that. Didn't really understand Cap Classique. And so went to Villera, did a sort of like a tasting. And when they explained Cap Classique, we're sort of looking at each other like, yeah, is it like, really? Then we tried the Monroe, and it became the love of our lives. So we would generally just always buy a couple of bottles and stuff. So that for me was really the massive light bulb moment. And it's why I'm such a fan of Cap Classique in general, and really proud that South Africa can produce Cap Classiques of the standard that we do.
It's one thing to fall in love with wine, many people do. It's another to actually turn it into a business. And I think there's quite a lot of romance to that idea. I need to have a wine farm, Is there a wine farm one day? I've done enough in the industry to know I never want to own a wine farm, because it's far too much hard work. But having your own wine brand is really, really cool. But it is quite a commitment. You've got some able lieutenants for this journey that you're on. But how do you come to that decision? How do you settle on, right, we're actually going to do it, and then this is how we'd like it to unfold?
Yeah. I think then, so one of the things I get asked, I've got a day job, I've got a foundation, I've got that. It's like, how do you, get the time to do all of those things? For me, like when you're really passionate about something, you find the time, I think is the first thing I would say. And we'd been talking with two friends of mine for a very long time about we really want to start our own wine brand. And right now, I mean, when I think about where I do want the wine brand to go, we're probably 30% of where I want us to go. But what was very clear to me was we needed to start. Because I think the more thinking you do, and you wanted an absolute perfect business plan and stuff, you'll actually never move forward. And so what we said to each other is, guys, let's just start. And the first thing we did is let's find a winemaker who can help us make this wine. And we got some really good recommendations. And we worked with David from Spider Pigs and stuff, from Spider Pig Wines. And yeah, a really great guy. And I think even in working with him helping us understand, don't go too broad because that becomes too much to manage. And so we started off pretty niche. And at that time, because of my job, also really having connections with the wine industry, actually, and able to chat to a couple of winemakers about what do you think would be the best place to start. And I mean, I'm more a Chardonnay girl, and what I wanted to make was a Chardonnay and stuff. And them saying actually probably Sauvignon Blanc and Chenin are probably the first place to go from a wine perspective if you think about what South Africans are interested in. And then from a red perspective, fortunately, I'm a Cab Sav girl when it comes to that. So saying, it's one of the high selling, that's the direction you should go. I think the MCC journey was like a little bit more interesting because Blanc de Blanc is obviously not like necessarily a Cab classic that a lot of South Africans know about. And so, going in that direction, I think was interesting for us. And that was a recommendation. So I guess also when you do it, you're a wine drinker, you're a wine lover, but you're a winemaker, and you've got to be able to have what's the word? Like listen to people, take the advice, and all of that and stuff, which can be hard for some of us who are C-suite people. But we really listened. And yeah, so for me, it's been that it's like just start the journey. And once you have it, actually it's there, it's real. I mean, I remember seeing that first box arrive and it had Kebo Noir, and I was like, oh my word.
That's an exciting moment.
It is such an exciting moment and stuff. But we've got like really big plans for it in the future. So yeah.
So there are undoubtedly people listening at the moment, and some of them will be looking at this as a dream they've had themselves.
Yeah.
And one day we'd like to do something similar, aside from the fact that it's probably a lot more hard work than they might imagine.
Yeah.
What would your 2 or 3 golden rules be if producing my own wine label is something I want to do?
Yeah, I think the first thing, don't have expectations that all of a sudden I'm going to be a millionaire in 1 year because I've sold millions of bottles of wines and stuff. Because I can tell you from a distribution perspective, like all of that, it's actually really, really tough. We've been lucky enough to have friends who've helped us get listed at Norman Goodfellows, but so your expectations, just temper them, and at least you've started. So don't have this massive expectations from year one and stuff. I do think build a network within the wine industry. So I'm talking about Norman Goodfellows. If it wasn't, I'll be honest, for Dan, we wouldn't have been listed there and stuff. So you're not going to be able to do it alone. So make sure that you've got the right people on board, and even actually David, really helping us make the wine and helping us understand some of the nuances, and all of that. And then also just know that maybe I'm going to give 4. Know that you're going to spend a lot of your own money, personal money, and maybe it's linked to the first point. Don't expect a return on it immediately. You're building for the future here.
Now, I know when I first visited you, you were living in a 4-story house in Saxonwold, and I came to you last week, and you're in a caravan park.
Exactly.
Over on the West Strand.
Exactly.
I'm sure that's unlinked.
So just know you're gonna, and so you've got to think about it. If it's a passion point, especially, think about it as, I might lose this money. It might never come back. And that's okay because it's a passion point, right, for yourself and stuff. So if you have that mindset, I think you'll treat it with a lot more energy instead of worrying about the rands and cents, and all of that. And then if you're going to do it with friends or just people, make sure that you've got the same vision.
How to end a friendship very quickly.
Very quickly. And be clear, by the way, amongst yourselves who brings what to the table and stuff. So, we always knew that Kebo, who's one of my friends and who's involved, is actually much more serious about how the wine tastes and all of that. So we generally leave the tastings to him, and he knows how to drive that and stuff. We know from myself, I'm probably the one who can one, money, and then two, can also get us into interesting spaces from a marketing perspective and all of that. And then our last partner, Mzamo, was more, he's got an agency. So lucky enough that we got someone to be able to design the label and all of that. And so know all your strengths. And then he's also can be quite operational as well, which is not a big strength of Tebogo and I's. And then we brought in someone else to just help us on the operational side as well, because we do have day jobs.
Well, let's talk about that day job, because what you do does allow you to leverage the wine. You've alluded to the marketing already. I was going to list the marketing awards that you've won, but that would have become a 7-hour podcast. But from Marketer of the Year in all sorts of categories to winning all of these accolades, you've had a very storied marketing career. The opportunities that we have in telling a South African wine story, in selling South African wine, have to address many of the challenges that we have in that space. And the challenges are plenty. Are younger people turning away from wine? What has the American president woken up and decided this morning about tariffs? How are the national vineyards competing with property developers? There are all sorts of issues. And telling the wine story is going to counter that. And for me, that's the real hope that we have. So what, from your perspective, when you set aside Kenzie, the wine owner, and step back into Kenzie, the award-winning marketer, where are we getting it right? Where are we getting it wrong? What is the potential that we have to tell a more compelling wine story that helps the industry to take more advantage of its potential?
Yeah, look, I'll start. I mean, I've been fortunate enough that, firstly, most countries that I travel to, one of the first things I do is there a wine land somewhere, right? Because I always want to visit a wine farm and just see, in the context of a tourist, for example, like what do you experience and stuff. So one of the things I've learned, and not all you've got maybe a few wine farms in South Africa that do that, is it's not just a wine tasting, it's an experience of the farm itself. Whether it's the making of the wine and stuff, whether it's, I was in Albania recently and got told the story of the owners of that wine farm. So one happens to be in government and one owns a football club. Their dad started the farm. And then as we were chilling there, they come in and they're like, was it South African? Or Albanians apparently love South African. It was weird. Everyone asked me, are you all like Nelson Mandela? I said, yes. Like,
we grew up next door.
Yeah, And then going on a little trip on the river, on this lake that they have by the farm. So for me, it's creating a bigger experience than the tasting of the wine itself, which I thought I think sometimes we're missing. I almost feel like with wine tastings in South Africa, please no one take offense to this, it feels like a factory. It feels like, let's get numbers through. Hi, so this is our cab serve. It's got this, taste, done. This is then our Chardonnay. It's got this, taste, done. You don't get a sense of the story behind the wine farm. You don't get a sense of they don't give you other experiences beyond just the tasting and stuff. I do think there are some farms that are doing that better, but the majority, personally, I feel like as a tourist who would like to experience a wine farm, that's what I would want to experience. Just very recently, I was in Spain. And we went down so we're in Mallorca, and we went for my mom's birthday. We'd literally booked out this long table just to celebrate, for lunch and stuff. And so the guy who runs marketing there, Pierre, made sure that the winemaker came, really, spoke to my mom, delivered the wine to her. And so for me, I think the experience part of it, I think, is really important. I think the second thing, and maybe let me go to, you go to all these countries and they've all got their singular sort of grapes that are particular to that space or that country or that region or that, place and stuff. What I really love is in Albania, for example, I can't remember the name of the grape, but in general, when you went to restaurants and the sommeliers, if you asked them to recommend something, they'd actually always start with the grape that comes from, with the local stuff before they recommend much more broadly. Whereas that's not the experience that we have here. So we've got to get our sommeliers behind our own grapes and stuff. Yes, we can then talk about, others. I mean, obviously we grow them here, more broadly and stuff. But grapes that are just traditionally South African, where, you can have this entire story about it and all of that. So I think the sommeliers need to be involved in the context of ensuring that from a marketing perspective, a sales perspective, they're talking up our grapes, because then what that means is that the person who can go to another country and they'll be like, I tasted this grape from South Africa, and that starts becoming a big thing. And then I do think our Cap Classic is phenomenal. So, whenever I think about the branding of South Africa, right? So what do you think about, and this is maybe an issue just for South Africa in general, when you think about Germany, efficiency, you think about France, it's probably like what, glamour, like that sort of stuff. We don't have, like, I think,
That South African touch
that's
point.
that's just like, what is it and stuff, and yeah, maybe it's Ubuntu, I'm not sure, like maybe, yeah. So I think what we've got to do from a wine perspective is think about what's our je ne sais quoi and link the wine to that. And so whenever we're telling the brand South Africa story, we ensure that wine is part of it and is really linked to the brand South Africa story. But the challenge for brand South Africa, and actually, by the way, just to say, I'm interviewing they've asked me to be part of the interview panel for the next CMO for Brand South Africa. And one of my challenges that I'll be looking at for that person is, are you able to articulate what, like, that one thing that South Africa is? And we're many things, by the way, I know that. But the positioning, like globally, it's important that people know you for something and, whatever that thing is. And then we link wine to that. And then I get to Cap Classic. For me, it's been fascinating again in Spain. Of course you can get champagne, but the first thing they're like is have cava. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you got to, like Prosecco, like when you're in Italy and stuff. Yeah. And so, and by the way, having tasted all of those, I think Cap Classic is phenomenally much better than all of them.
By a mile.
Miles better. And so I just think, so even on SAA, on anything that, like, that's the thing that they should put first before they get to any champagne or anything. If you want to have a celebration, we should be putting our Cap Classics ahead.
Top of the pack.
Top of the pack and stuff. So in any place where I said, can I have bubbles? Like, and they were like, have covered. I'm like, oh my God, I don't really like this thing and stuff. So they are pushing their own. We've got to get like the entire ecosystem, even from a tourism perspective, really, really driving that. And then I think we do need to ensure that globally, whenever there's wine events and all of that, our winemakers can actually compete at that level, right? And they are going to those, whether it's showcases or anything like that. I think there's a lot of organizations in South Africa that are trying to ensure that the quality of our wine competes globally and stuff, which is fantastic. And we need to ensure that we continue to showcase those globally. And then for brands, the brand that I work on, Nedbank, loves wine, like beyond the CMO and stuff. So how do we ensure that brands are supportive of the wine industry? Because the only way that, one of the ways that a lot of the winemakers can be seen globally and all of that is if brands give them the platforms to be able to showcase in South Africa, hopefully make money, and then be able to showcase globally and stuff. So I think I always think about, from a value chain perspective, how can Nedbank also play a role in the wine industry? And we will be launching something, I think, really exciting when it comes to that, to really showcase our wines in a very different way and stuff. So I do challenge even just other people who work on other brands and stuff. Guys, you don't just have to only sponsor cricket, rugby, and football. They do happen to be other things that South Africans actually love and stuff. So I would really challenge brands to say, wine is a massive passion point actually for a lot of people in South Africa. So how do you help that industry in terms of creating events with them and sponsoring them? And actually wine allows you to create much more bespoke events than just a football game. And I'm not saying, Nedbank Cup is amazing for us, right? But at the end of the day, it's a game between two teams and stuff. Whereas with wine, I think you can create some really bespoke, beautiful experiences for your consumers and your clients and all of that, but also then be helping the wine industry on the other side, making sure that it's visible.
I love the sport comparison, and I often make it when I'm doing events where I feel that in any given week, there is a South African athlete at Banyana doing great in AFCON, or a golfer's just won a tournament in America, or a cricket team has performed. There's South African athletic excellence, and sports has become a real hallmark. But at any given minute of any given day, somebody in the world is opening a bottle of South African wine and going, wow, this is really good.
Good, yeah.
And that links back to what you've really just summed up, which is the storytelling.
Yeah.
Because we have incredible people. You go to France and it's all about the name of the estate or the domain. We're very much about the winemakers.
Yeah.
And maybe because commercially a lot of it is a lot younger, but those personalities who we drive, the stories that they have. I'm unlikely to remember a bottle of Chardonnay because of the caliber of its malolactic fermentation
go. Yeah.
in the industry, but I know that this was made by the third generation of a particular family and the story behind them and who they are. That strikes a chord. And I think all marketing, this is me telling you about marketing, but all marketing, the ultimate aim is to find an emotional connection with the people you're trying to speak to. And wine is brimming with that potential.
It absolutely is. I mean, and even like some stories aren't even necessarily about the winemakers or anything. Like, I still remember going to the Grainberg wine farm and finding out that when Barack Obama was inaugurated, this is the wine. I'm like, well, I'm drinking Barack Obama's wine. Do you know what? And those stories, Dan, are much more powerful. Of course, there's going to be a segment of the market that's quite fixated on the nitty-gritties and all of that and stuff.
But which is a crucial segment.
Which is a crucial segment.
But if we're going to tell a broader story and give wine more oxygen, it has to go beyond that nucleus of people who know the difference between third and fourth Hungarian egg barrels. I'm not one of those. And you say that you drink Graham Beck because Barack drank. Barack drank it because Madiba drank it, because it was at his inauguration.
Exactly.
And those connections that wine can make give it such extraordinary power. I'd spend probably 2 to 3 days a week blocking you from social media because you're just in these enormously cool places doing amazing things. Like, I'm very envious. But when I look at some of the places you mentioned, Albania, but look beyond that, you do get to do some extraordinary travel. You speak at all these great conferences. You see loads of different parts of the world. You've spoken about how you love getting to wine farms, getting to wine estates. I think we can almost paraphrase Madiba judging a community by how they treat their children. I judge a country by the quality of its wine lists. And it's a really fun way to explore.
Yeah.
Where else have you been surprised by the wine, discovered a wine journey that maybe you weren't anticipating?
I mean, Budapest. And it was so fascinating because the farms there, first of all, from a tourism perspective, the people who are taking you through the tasting are the owners. And I was lucky enough to go through to 3 different farms. One, very small, like the guy literally like 1,000 bottles or whatever it was, right? And then we got taken like a little bit bigger. But the last one, we actually had dinner with the winemaker and his family. Do you think I'd ever forget that? Like,
It's amazing.
never forget that and stuff. So
Now, I know you well enough. Did he know you were coming for dinner? Or did you just walk into his house, announce that you're coming? Because you would do that sort of thing.
do that. And the thing that, like on all, 3 of them, just the passion for their country, the passion for the wines that they were making. And then one of the things, so I said to them, "Do you guys export?" And stuff. They said, "No, we don't. We create only enough for Hungary and stuff." But it's actually, they're fine with that. Like, they're not, like, for them, that's just okay and stuff. So that wine route for me was completely shocking. And then in the middle of these 3 wine farms, Dan, we're sitting at a just restaurant and stuff, and a wedding happens, just like.
And you invited
I just invited myself and stuff. So again, I can't even say were the wines amazing or anything. It just that entire day was incredible for me. Meeting people, like to have dinner with a winemaker at his home, with his wife and kids, and we're drinking his wines and he's telling me about them and all of that is seminal to me. I still have that wine from the farm. And I'm not sure it's meant to last that long, by the way. So by the time I open it, who knows how it's going to taste. But I'm so emotionally invested and connected to that wine that, I'll probably just never drink it, to be honest, and just keep it forever.
By the end of the night, you were probably speaking Hungarian.
Probably, you know,
quality of wine. But you would have been able to share your passion, and I'm sure Winemakers Family picked up on that
think
very,
he
very
did,
quickly.
yeah.
And you've already spoken about wine passionately. Let's drink some wine passionately. There's this love of bubbles. So this is the Kebo Noir with your two cohorts. And it's you talk about when the first box arrives. I think what would be even more seminal is when you did get to open the very first packaged bottled bottle. You would have done a tasting in the build-up.
Yeah.
Suddenly, here is the finished product. My baby has arrived, and I'm a super proud mum.
Yeah, I mean, and we ended with the MCC on purpose because we wanted to like celebrate, I guess, because that's obviously what Bubbles is about. And to this day, I mean, I love our other varietals, but I think this is superb. It's like completely 100% Chardonnay, grapes from Franschhoek, and every time. So I forget the first time, Dad. Like even now, like every time I drink
You
it,
still get that buzz.
I still get that buzz. And then what people, I mean, just know this, like when you've got your own wine, guys, like it is amazing. You invite people to your house and you're like, I'll serve you my wine. It is such a like.
So this explains why, because I've actually seen the finances in your company, and in terms of wine sold, this business made about 30 million rand last year, but it lost 45 because Kenzie keeps having tasting sessions
at my house. It's incredible. I mean, one of our friends, like who's part of the business, when he got married, the bubbles for the day was our wine and stuff. So guys, if at all, that's why I'm saying, like, just if it's a passion thing, it's okay. And I mean, like, if you want to make money out of it and all of that, that's okay as well. I mean, just, figure out what. But for us, I think it's also just that moment when, and I did the toast at his wedding, and I started off the toast by saying, by the way, we're going to toast with our own wine and stuff, which is the best thing to say at a wedding.
90 minutes later.
You know what I mean? My birthday is coming up. I love celebrations, which is probably why I also love bubbles. So I don't care how old I'm turning, but every year I celebrate my birthday, and I always have themes and stuff. So this year, I've just had a particular love I love Japan, and I don't know what happened actually this year that reminded me of the last time I went to Japan. So the theme for my birthday this year is something Japanese thing. I can't remember something like that. And I'm like, so someone's like, the lady who's planning is like, so the wines are like, oh, no, that's in hand. Don't worry about that. But it's beautiful. And also just, I remember when my mom, and she was asking me about, so what is Kebo Noir? And I was sitting with the K is Kensi, the BO is Tebucho, like his name, and Noir, black, because we're black. Anyway, like, and my mom was just like, oh, wow, so you really do have your own wine. Can I taste it? And I was like, Mom, of course. Like, I've brought you cases of this thing because I don't know if anyone's going to buy it. So, but, please, I'll give it to you. And my mom is actually one of our biggest, like, supporters. She has a standing order of 2 cases every month of each of the varietals.
And she lives alone and hasn't had any visitors for the last year. That is dedication.
It is. She's like, oh, my poor daughter.
Like I've got no doubt that there is an element of dedication and pride and love in that. Yeah. But she's also buying some pretty good wines.
She really, really is. Yeah.
She knows what she's doing.
She really does.
It is a story up to a point. There is a lot more to come. There are many more chapters of this wine, as there are many more chapters of the South African wine industry. And I think you're a great illustration of those two intertwining. There is a lot to take from your thoughts from the marketing side. And I think there are a lot of people in South Africa who are that genuinely want to make this a better, broader, more inclusive, more successful industry. And it's there to be done because as you discover on a weekly basis on your international travels, where South African wine is as good as any in the world.
Absolutely.
And we just need more people to be exposed to that. But we also, and this is the challenge I leave you with, given that you're enormously powerful and very influential, and you've made lots of cool things happen, it's all well and good to tell the South African wine story in Copenhagen and have a Michelin star restaurant order 2 cases of great Swartland Chenin. But the biggest audience for South African wine is South Africa.
Agreed.
And we need more people to understand how good it is, to realize what amazing people are involved in this industry, and to just revel in the absolute joy of South African wine. So I'm leaving you to sort all of that out and come back to me in 3 months' time on the show with empirical evidence
say
that you've
solved.
done. Oh dear, Kenzie, it's always a delight. I'm very excited about what is to come with the Nedbank Wine Challenge.
Yeah.
It sounds mysterious, but very cool. And also to see what more is to come from Kebo Noir. I think you're off to a good start, but knowing you as well as I do, and knowing Tobacco as well as I do, there's plenty more to come, and that gives me great excitement.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Always love chatting to you.
There we go. The first time we've got through 7 bottles of wine in a single episode. South Africa's greatest marketer, also the owner of the very cool Kebo Noir brand, my incredibly special guest on Dan Really Likes Wine this week, Khensani Nobanda.